Hello, it's Dr. Darnice, and welcome back into the house. Listen, we're on here today talking about Jason Arday, and that is because he's an academic and he is really going through it right now. I'm an academic. This is my wheelhouse here in terms of academia, being a professor. And I made a short about this, and there's been a lot of views and comments on that short. And so I wanted to come back and make a longer form, specifically addressing at least what I see is going on in this situation. Now, if you don't know who Jason Arday is, I don't know what's on your timeline, but he is a professor, young black professor at Cambridge University who has been accused of plagiarism and a lot of other things. And so because he is at Cambridge University, this is getting a lot of attention. And that really is my guiding question in this video. It's not to be scandalous or to, throw any further aspersions at him. It's really to say, why is it that the case with this particular professor who has been accused of plagiarism, why is he getting this particular kind of media scrutiny where there have been other professors accused of plagiarism? I mean, that's not brand new. And you probably can't think of any of them because it didn't make news. But this has made news. Cambridge University has a very high status university in the world, right, in England. And I think they're licking their wounds over this. They're embarrassed that they have this professor who they, on one hand, really held up on a pedestal because he was young, black. He has a story of being autistic and speaking late and all of these things where he seemed to be like a miracle, like a unicorn, right? Somebody who started off nonverbal autistic and who managed to get himself through a master's and a PhD program. And so at Cambridge, they were like, yes, we'd love to have him. They, were happy to have him. And then the accusation started after a while, and this is what we're here to look at. Okay, what was overlooked? Because it does seem that Jason Arday had a lot of things that are at least questionable, some degree, and to some things probably just false. Some of the things that he has represented about himself are probably false, but these are accusations and allegations and investigations that are ongoing. So we will see. But it is interesting that the spotlight is on this particular professor. And so some people will say, why bring race into it? Well, it's not that I'm bringing race into it. It's not that black people are necessarily bringing race into it. When you listen to reports throughout the media, they always refer to him as a black professor at Cambridge, the young black professor at Cambridge. That's how the media always presents black people. They refer to our color, to our race. When it's a white person, they don't say, oh, this young white professor over here at, UCLA or wherever. So it's not so much that we're just like, we're going to talk about this as race alone. That is a component. But the media already does that. And you might not have noticed that. It's always, if it's a black person, it's like, oh, look at this black person over there. Look what this black person did. Okay, so let's take a look at, some of the things that he's been accused of doing, just for clarity. I didn't have time to do all of that in the short that I made. So a couple of things that he's been accused of doing. Jason Arday at Cambridge, and his field is sociology of education. So one of the things is his human studies research. So now, as someone in a doctoral program, when you're doing research and you are surveying or researching with actual humans, when you are doing any sort of, case study and you're going to study with people, if you're gathering people for surveys, if you're going to a place and you are really observing people, definitely if you're running any experiments with people, there are policies in place designed to protect the public, to protect your sample group. Okay, so there are policies in place that you will have to abide by in order to protect people and also to verify your methodology and what you're doing. And so apparently with Jason Arday, they've been unable to verify that he did the type of research that he did, or at least in the way that he said he did. So there are discrepancies in his human studies participant policy. How do I know? I have a PhD myself. I've been teaching for over 20 years. That book right there, Beyond Christianity, is my dissertation that was later published as a book. Believe me, all research has been done, and more than adequately. We're talking more than 20 years ago. But anyway, this is also why I know this. Also, he said that he had visiting assistant professorships at 2 universities, which now say he did not. One was at Ohio State, and the other is University of Glasgow. So he said that he was on their faculty as a visiting professor at some point, and they say no. Also, his work is accused of plagiarism, so I don't know if that's specifically like AI, depending on when this was done, or just sort of copy pasting, plagiarizing from another source and not citing it, which I tell my students all the time. You cannot just take somebody else's work and call it your own. If you do not cite it properly, meaning give that person their props, you will be accused of plagiarism, which is basically theft. And when you are in the business of being an academic, and our currency is our research, is our intellectual capacity and our intellectual production, it's very important that you are above reproach about any of that, because this is our currency, right? It is about saying that I'm an expert in my field, and this is how I got to be an expert in my field. I have done research for years and years and years in a master's program, in a PhD program. I've jumped through all of the hoops. I know how to do these things. I know my field to the point where I am an expert in my field. And so now if we go back and we find out, oh no, you did not do the work appropriately, then I'm not sure you're an expert in your field. It's also come to light that some of his students at Cambridge had some complaints about him as well, his teaching style or whatever. I'm not sure about that, so I'm not going to touch it. Outside of the academy, in terms of the way he presented other aspects of his life, people have said, well, some of those things are not true. And these are things that are fairly easy to verify as being true or not. He said that he was a volunteer, and I'm looking out because I have some notes here, so I get it right. Yeah, he was a volunteer doing charity work on a water project. And that particular charity said, no, we didn't even have that type of program. So there's that. He said that he participated in a group called 7 Up, which I remember this documentary, which was about following these young people throughout the course of their lives. So you can Google 7 Up kids. I don't know what the full title of it is, but every 7 years, the documentarians would check in with these young people. So at age 7, age 14, age 21, and so on. So it's like doing a longitudinal study of following people throughout their lives and seeing what happens to them. And so he said, Jason Arday said, that he participated in this as well. Well, again, this was a documentary that was done well before him. So then he changed it and he said, well, no, I didn't mean that I participated in that documentary. I mean to say that I participated in something that was in my local community that we also called 7 Up. So that's what he said about that. He described himself as being a runner, and he talked about how many miles he could run in a day or in a week. And, he had to go back on that because, you can't run 100 miles in a day. I mean, it was just sort of extreme lengths that he said that he ran, and so he revised that. I don't know. I mean, I could go on, but, you could look up the story yourself. In his defense, he says that he did not fabricate his research. He says that he will be accountable for the mistakes that he made, which I think he means by, not citing certain people, so that his intent was not to plagiarize. His intent was not to plagiarize, but he may have made mistakes and not cited people properly. Now, again, part of this story of his rise and why he seemed like such a superstar to even be hired at Cambridge is that, as I mentioned earlier, he's autistic and he was nonverbal for many years. I forgot how old he was, but he was nonverbal for many, many years. And then he was unable to read and write, up to 18, I think the number is, up to 18 years old. So it's like, well, how did you get your education? How did you manage all of this? And so he seemed like a standout, a unicorn, right? So now to go back and to say, well, how did all of these things get by these institutions? How did these things slide by Cambridge University, for one? And, so here's where people say, oh, it was DEI, and they just look the other way. And here's why, Black people will point out, let me rephrase, this is why Black people will apply an additional layer of scrutiny to the scrutiny, because we know that when one person is accused of something who is Black, that will have a blowback on the rest of us. So now Jason Arday becomes a poster boy for the conservatives who say, see, this is a case of DEI, and therefore there are so many other people of color who have positions like mine as a professor, as an academic, who probably don't belong there either. So here's the racialized component, in case you are confused about why this becomes a racialized component. It is because when a Black person is accused of something or convicted of something, it's projected onto all Black people, especially within a community like Black academics. So now all Black academics are like, okay, well, here come these people against all of us. And that doesn't happen to white people. So if you're a white person watching this, you're like, well, I don't understand. Well, think about this. What is the description of a serial killer? 99% of the time that they show us a serial killer, they're white. But does that apply to all white people? No. White people have the privilege of being considered the norm, and so when some white people act out, some white people are criminals, it doesn't get reflected upon the whole. But when you are a minority person, so-called minority, at least in the United States, when there is a Black person convicted of something or suspected of something, then it's like, oh, see, all of them. Oh, see, none of them belong here. Which is, back to just kind of segue on that, the person who originally brought this to the attention of Cambridge and the media is someone by the name of Nathan Coffness, who is himself someone whose claims as a scholar himself have said that if meritocracy was really the rule, then we'd have far fewer Black people, far fewer students graduating, Black students graduating from Harvard, far fewer Black people in the academy, basically. And this person, again, Nathan Coffness, he says he stands by that Black people are just inferior. So considering that is the person who has been watching Jason Arday, going through Jason Arday's work at this level, yeah, it makes Black people say, well, what exactly, why have you been obsessed with Jason Arday? Okay, so there's so many layers, and it's still unfolding. I did just want to come in and say there's a reason why this story has become such a popular story, has taken over the media. And as I said, for one, it's Cambridge University, and they're feeling some kind of a way of having to defend themselves as to how they allowed this person onto their faculty. Why did they believe his hype, so to speak? Were they lax in what they were doing in terms of their due process and hiring? But also there is a celebrity aspect, because his personal story, he just seemed like a wonder kid. He just seemed like, wow, this is an amazing story, and he's on our faculty. And so he has risen in the public life. He's risen in public life. And so his fall is in public life. It is also racialized, and I think for other people who are neurodivergent, like he is autistic, other people who are neurodivergent, they're going to have probably things to say too. They're watching this too because this reflects on them. Are people who are artistic as capable? I mean, that's going to blow back on them as well. So there are layers to this. And gosh, what else did I want to say? Cambridge has been doing its own investigation. Arday has resigned, if you didn't know that, because that's been all over the media as well. Arday has resigned. He said that this is very difficult on him. I'm sure it is, the level of scrutiny coming at his life right now. You know, even if he did these things, the level of scrutiny coming at someone right now, and someone who's neurodivergent, I'm sure he's overwhelmed and probably doesn't know what to do. And so he resigned from the scrutiny, but the scrutiny continues, as it will. This is a huge story, not only in academia, but in a lot of different ways. And it affects a lot of us, a lot of people of color who are academics, those of us who have worked really hard to get masters and PhDs, who've written dissertations and who've been in the professorate for decades, as I have. I've been I was a college student for a long time. A college professor for 21, I think it's 21 years now. So, in any case, my point is to wrap this all up once again. Yes, the story becomes racialized. Yes, the story becomes bigger than him because it is about academia in general. It is about elite institutions like Cambridge University. And it is about conservative versus progressive worldview. Who gets a shot and who doesn't? Who is determined to be fit and who's not fit? Who is welcome in certain spaces and who's not welcome? What happens to certain people when they are accused of something, and there are other people who are accused of something similar, plagiarism, and they still keep their job. There are professors all around the world who have been accused of plagiarism, who have even been found guilty of plagiarism, who've kept their jobs. There have been people who have submitted scientific papers to journals, and they've made mistakes, and because they've made mistakes in those journal articles, the articles have been removed, and those people have had a slap to the wrist, but they have not lost their jobs. Why is that? Anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. I made another video about why different people see race differently, and I will put that in the description box and probably link it as well in the comments, because it also gives us another way of understanding why conservatives look at this kind of scenario, why they look at race the way they do. And you may think that's surprising coming from me, but it is me going through the work of Julius Bailey in particular to talk about the idea of the conservative framing. How is it that conservatives look at race, understand race relations, or misunderstand? And so their worldview is very different. So when they look at somebody like Jason Arday, they will say, well, you know, he just doesn't fit in. He never fit in, and he never should have been hired, and there are others like him, and oh my gosh. And then they're on the lookout for who else in the environment doesn't belong. The conservative framing would have us believe that the only people who are really qualified are white men, maybe white women, maybe some Asians, depending on the field. So I would suggest that you go and watch that as well. I did that video even before the Jason Arday situation happened, or at least before I started talking about it. So it's kind of an interesting confluence of time. But let me know your comments. Keep them civil. Let me know your comments about Jason Arday. And maybe we're looking at, because he is neurodivergent, maybe we are looking at some mental health issues that we need to pay more attention to than we are paying. Maybe we need to look at this differently. The way that the media is looking at this is very much, oh, is he just, a scam artist? At least some media, I won't say all media, but some media figures are like, oh, he's just been scamming the system. I don't know. Was he intentionally scamming, or was this an extension of, something of his own mental state? I don't know. And I'm not here to really defend him anyway, because I don't know him like that, and I don't really know what he did or did not do. But I wanted to come on and talk about why we're all talking about him and what that says about the larger community. So thanks for joining, especially if you have been here this long. Thank you for that. And yeah, stay around the house and watch some other videos. As you see, I talk about the Black intellectual tradition. I talk about Black history, spirituality, Black literature, that kind of thing. All right, bye for now.